So I'm Rob Means. I'm representing Loopworks. We are trying to build some smart transit in the area around the BART Transit Hub and the Great Mall that's across that, at that point, 12-lane roadway called Montague Expressway. And it's really a small vehicle. So we're dealing with a small vehicle here. It's kind of like you take a regular car, but you cut off the trunk in the back and the hood in the front, and you're just left with the passenger cabin. And if you take out the front seats and you just leave in the back seat, and with a couple of what we call jump seats that fold up when they're not in use, so you can actually carry about 4 people in one of these cabins that is in turn attached to what we call a bogie down here in the guideway, which is about 3 feet by 3 feet in size. So it's a relatively small.
Rob, are you trying to share something?
Go ahead.
No, I'm asking. I don't see anything. That's why I'm asking.
I can see what Rob is sharing.
Sorry, I got the wrong one.
I can see it too.
I see it.
Thank you. The wrong Zoom window in the wrong place.
So the bogie that is down here actually has the stop and go, the smarts, the sensors, and all that stuff is really happening down here inside the guideway. And this cabin is attached to it, and I'll just call the combination of the two a cab as we go through this. This doorway actually slides back, as you can see here. The roof is slid back over this way, so that makes it easy to walk in, bring in your bicycle stroller in this case, and your micro person, and just sit down and select the destination, and you're on your way. And in some ways, you could liken it to a horizontal elevator, where you just walk in, tell it where you want to go, and you go there. Only unlike an elevator, you don't stop at intermediate stops, because you don't. It's one of the wonders of this system. So let's do this. So what people want is what PRT does. And like the automobile, for example, it's always there for you when you need it. It's personal, a personal cab that's safe, clean, and convenient. Unlike a personal automobile, however, anyone can use it because it's easy to use. You just get in, select your destination, and go. Another very nice feature that puts it separate from the cars is that it's on time all the time, because it's running around at a non-stop speed of 30 to 40 miles per hour average. So specifically what it is cabs on elevated guideways that bypass offline stations to provide non-stop travel 24/7. And when we're talking about these cabs, the lightweight nature of these is really key to keeping the cost down of the elevated guideway, which could and generally is just a huge cost factor for mass transit systems. But specifically, we're talking about, say, a Camry. This year's model Camry weighs about 3,000 pounds. But these cabs, that's the passenger cabin and the bogie that is attached to, the combination weighs roughly 1,000 pounds, or 1/3 as much. Running on elevated guideways, so you're not interfering with ground level traffic, hitting dogs, kids, past other cyclists and whatnot. The offline stations allow cabs to just bypass them and provide nonstop travel for the users. And that comes 24/7 because it's computer controlled. We're talking about 12 stations, so we're going to be pretty well providing access in that area around the BART Transit Center and provide easy access to it. Now, if I had a bit more time, I'd go ahead and run this 3-minute video. I recommend that you go to milpetasprt.com. there on the home page is a link to this video and accompanied by a link to a number of videos. I think there's 6 or 8 of them. Why do I feel I missed a slide? Okay, I'm just going to live with it. Here we are. So this is the actual layout that we have proposed. We're going to be starting down here at the bottom with this small, what we call a mini loop. It's about 1.5 miles long with 5 stations. One, of course, will be here at the BART Transit Center. If things go well with that, as we anticipate, then we're going to add on another 7 stations and a longer loop that serves this area, which is a lot of industrial and office park area. Housing in this area, the north end of the Great Mall, the LRT station here, this entire section of town that's been kind of isolated called the Pines. They'll have a stop that they can access and get them easily and quickly over this railroad track and creek and into the BART station here. Now, the area that we plan on covering here is about 1.4 miles square. And running the numbers, we're anticipating in excess of 7,000 trips per day provided by this PRT system in that area. But that's not the end of it. And this is where things could get really exciting, because PRT, according to studies, and we've got a series of studies that have been conducted on all these various places below here, but according to the studies, it's likely to produce a ridership boom for the existing transit, so that the cumulative total of LRT, BART, and the buses will effectively double or more, depending on by adding PRT to the mix. So they did a study in Prague, for example, and they say 1x is what we've currently got, and if you add PRT, we're going to basically double that to 2x. But in Daventry, which actually has a public ridership level that's closer to what we experience here in Santa Clara County, they're expecting a 5-fold increase in the use of public transit, while Coper is expecting a 15-fold increase. Now, we don't know how much our PRT system is going to impact ridership on the other transit systems, but we will find out, because it's one of the things we're going to measure as we go along. And I anticipate it's probably going to be between doubling and a 15-fold increase. That gives me a lot of elbow room. The Transportation Committee's mission, it was as though it were written for PRT, to promote the most cost-effective, equitable, least polluting, and least sprawl-inducing transportation possible. And PRT scores high on all of these factors. And then the way we plan on doing it, we're going to be rectifying the imbalance between auto transport and all the other transportation options that are available. Current project status, we've accomplished quite a bit so far. Our business plan is in place, over 100 pages of details, bylaws have been approved, the website is up, and very informative. If you've got any questions, they are probably answered there. And if not there, right on the website, we've got a documents in the documents list in one of the sections that gets into much more detail. We've incorporated with the state. We've submitted our first grant applications, and we've recruited president, secretary, and treasurer, and enrolled members. The place where we have not experienced outstanding success is with the city council here in Milpitas. So our current strategy is to continue building public support, and that may look like enrolling more members. It may look like endorsement letters. It may look like getting money in for the project. We've gotten to the Q&A section here pretty much. Often questions are, how quick is it? We're looking at an average speed of 30 miles per hour, which means that you can get to any of the 12 stations in less than 6 minutes. Although we're looking at a 5 to 7 year horizon for how soon this system will be up and running, if we get some support early on, we could shrink that time and actually make PRT a factor in reducing our CO2 emissions before it's too late. The user fare. One of the things we're trying to accomplish is equity in our area. And this is one way to do it, by providing service for basically free. Obviously, the operating costs will be handled elsewhere. And if you go to the financing section on our website, you'll see how we plan on doing it. Who owns it? Loopworks will actually be the owner of it. It's a mutual benefit corporation that effectively creates a governance system that maintains community control. If you'd like to support us, get in where you fit in. Write a letter of support, lobby the Milpitas council members. We heard earlier from John Cordes that the council members like to actually listen, or at least make time to listen to Sierra Club members. And if you've endorsed any of our council members in the past, you may want to have a word with them. Currently, we feel that we're getting support from Karina Dominguez, and getting resistance, particularly from Mayor Tran. And the others are less easy to read, but well, actually, Vice Mayor Carmen Montano has come out and said that she doesn't think that this PRT system is possible, so I would count her as a no also. Become a community member. So for folks inside Milpitas, it's a $100 entry fee. For folks outside, it's $1,000 plus approval by the board. But you would be not the first if you wanted to become a outside the Milpitas community member. And then, of course, foundation members that contribute $60,000 or more to the effort will be members that can vote on the foundation director that is on the board of directors. I don't imagine any one of you are really connected to a foundation that's sending out good chunks of grant money, but you may know somebody who is. And if they're looking for a good project with a high return on investment, there's very few alternatives that I'm aware of anyway. If you need to contact us, you can reach us through our website or email address. And let's make Sierrans proud. I anticipate that anybody gets on early will have some serious bragging rights in a couple of years when the money starts rolling in and we start moving forward on the project. So unless somebody wants to talk about these slides, or I can, well, maybe I'll just leave this up in case you do and answer any questions that you may have. Looks like Samuel's looking for his.
Yeah. I have a question. So, sort of unclear how this got started and who's been funding it and how much you've spent so far and that sort of thing.
So this got started from my desire. Well, here, let's back up this picture here. I'll show you what got me going here. So I live up over in this area in the upper right corner, basically, and we have a street called Yosemite that comes down to here, but does not cross the railroad tracks here, which, oh, by the way, now is the BART tracks also. And for over 20 years, we've been trying to get an overcrossing there. We've had it on a number of documents. And I, as a cyclist, have been wanting to have a safe crossing there because my alternative crossings of this railroad track is down here with Montague Expressway, which, as I mentioned earlier, at this point widens out to about 12 lanes. It's not convivial for cyclists, shall I say, but is probably better than what is happening at the north end with Calaveras Boulevard, which narrows down to 2 lanes and when it goes over the railroad tracks and is, again, not friendly to cyclists. So this has really been kind of my pet project, is to get a crossing over the railroad tracks here so I could get safely across town. And I've just not been able to get the city interested or the VTA interested in doing this project of trying to build this PRT technology, see if it works, and give me a crossing over the railroad tracks, doggone it. Eventually, Mayor Tran made it very clear to me that this was not the city's project. This is your project, Rob. So I just took that to heart, just like I've taken a number of other suggestions from the city to heart. And decided, okay, it's going to be my project. Okay, well, let's get started on it. That's where the business plan came in, the incorporation, and we've basically laid the groundwork, and we've done it on a shoestring budget. The most money we've spent is to have an attorney review our bylaws to make sure we're clean there. And that was just a few $1,000s. So it's so far, there's been no real money expended, and this has been done on our own. So now we're at the point of going out to hustle money so that we can take it to the next step and get the design work done. We anticipate that that'll cost about 10% of the entire project to do the design work. And the entire project is priced out at about $60 million. So for $6 million, we figured we can get the design work done, and that should demonstrate to folks that we're serious about it and move on. Next.
Well, I'll ask another question. So this technology exists in other cities, or there's something new about it, or it's completely available off the shelf?
So there's multiple flavors of PRT. There's the PRT system at Heathrow Airport that uses the Ultra technology. There's Sunshin Bay in South Korea. Uses a larger vehicle. There's multiple systems that have been experimented with around the world, but they've never really been replicated and expanded. So the specific technology flavor of PRT that we're using was developed by a lot of engineers who in collaboration decided, okay, what are the factors we want to satisfy? How do we best satisfy them? And they came up with a design that is essentially open source. And it's very clean. It's probably one of the least costly. It looks to me, based on my experience doing various projects, to be pretty close to ideal. In terms of what you can get out of PRT technology with the current stuff that's going on.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like it's off-the-shelf components at this point.
Well, they tried to design it. No, it's not something that you go down to Ford and say, "Hey, give me 2 dozen of these cabs to drive away with." However, when they did the design, they tried their best to use off-the-shelf components in building it. So, for example, the power that powers these, they've got 2 hot rails going down the inside of the guideway cowling, and they've got 2 pickups to pick up the juice off of those hot wires, shall we say. And all of that technology can be purchased from company X, and they've got a product number, and you can just buy it off the shelf from them and install it. So that's an example of how the engineers that designed this system really did try to use off-the-shelf components as much as they can. The place where they were not able to apparently is in the cabin itself. Obviously, there's going to be components like the HVAC stuff that they'll buy off the shelf, but the cabin itself is going to be kind of our own design.
Well, it seemed like at the Microsoft campus, which I guess is up in Seattle, they have a very similar PRT running around.
No, I don't think they do. So what we were trying to do here, let's see if we got this here. Whoa, that's interesting. Oh, here we go. Let's do this. So this video that was created is an animation of what could have happened at the Microsoft campus but did not. Do you know something I don't?
No.
Okay.
Let's see. Do we have any other questions for Rob?
I have a
Yeah.
question.
Couple hands are up, yeah.
There you are. So Brett, it looks like you're at the top of the list. Why don't you go first? Your mic's
Oh,
open.
Mike was ahead of me, and Molly may have been ahead of both of us. I don't
Yeah,
know.
who knows? Go ahead, Molly.
I was just wondering if there are any other cities that are trying this.
Not in the U.S. And not for one of interest. There's been cities, activists in a lot of different cities across the country who have been interested in putting together a PRT system, but have been stalled at one point or another along the project. I'm thinking that the fact that nothing like this has been built in the United States in the last 45 years is an indictment of our systems of doing things. Our private for-profit system hasn't made it happen, and our governmental system has not made it happen. So I'm hoping, expecting that this kind of middle area between totally public owned and totally private owned, this mutual benefit corporation that we're creating, will be able to pull this off where those folks simply haven't done it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Brett, you want to tell your?
Sure. And maybe actually part of what I'm going to say might be another alternative answer to what Molly asked. I don't know if you're familiar with what's going on up in Contra Costa County, but they haven't built it yet, but they're working very hard on it. Company called Glideways, and they're looking to build a 28-mile system, and I can post links to that information in the chat if you want me to. But I had a couple of questions for you. One is that in your talk you mentioned a return on investment, and what I see on the web page is make a donation, and those are very different concepts. So you might want to clarify that a little bit.
Okay, let me address that one. And oh, by the way, Molly, if you're asking about cities that are interested in doing PRT systems, you may want to talk to Brett, because he is kind of one of the leaders of the Santa Cruz group that would really like to see PRT built down there.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, now I get back to the question again. I lost it already.
Oh, the question is whether you're soliciting donations or investments that have a return on investment.
So when I talk about a return on investment to a foundation who is giving money over to this project to make it happen and to see what happens, they're going to get their return on investment, because we're going to be monitoring all kinds of various factors. I mentioned earlier, for example, what's happening with the other transit in the area. Is the usage of that other transit going up after we put in a PRT system? We're going to be looking at passenger comfort. We're going to be looking about mean time between failures on any components that actually happen to break. We're going to find out there's a section in our business plan that talks about all the different things that we're going to be learning from this system, not the least of which is, well, is this estimate of $15 million per mile realistic or not? Because the consultants keep telling us it's not realistic. So we'll find out the answer to that question. And the answer to that specific question is going to make a huge difference moving forward in how we plan our cities, whether we're going to continue with mass transit or we're going to start looking at lighter weight, personalized transit systems that might also be an alternative to high-speed rail mass transit. Next.
My turn. Yeah, Michael Saint from Aptos. Thank you for the presentation, Rob. Very interesting stuff. First question is, what is the support, or have you approached the light rail people as well as the bus system, and are they pretty much for or against what you're doing? And the next question, I'm not sure your location there in Milpitas, if you belong to a community choice energy system, or are you PG&E? And could you go, which we have done before, we would go to our community choice energy and actually ask for grants for transportation. I don't know if they do that. What is it, Silicon Valley Clean Energy, or are you in a different one?
It is Silicon Valley Clean
Okay.
Energy. They
Yeah.
supply the electrons to Milpitas.
Right.
And I have approached them. I mentioned earlier that we had submitted a grant request. Well, we had actually submitted a grant request twice to Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and both
Okay.
times we've been turned down. In the first time, they were relatively non-specific about why they turned us down. The second time, I haven't gone back to them to ask why they turned us down. They
Okay.
gave us a reason, but so what? Anyway, that's to say that, hey, it's a good idea. I totally agree with that idea, and that's why they were my first choice in seeking funding.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a
So-
community choice, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
the question prior to that was,
Light rail and the bus system. Have you talked to them and say, do they think they will increase their service if you build this?
so both the light rail and the bus system are under the wings of what we call the Valley Transportation Authority. And VTA, actually, after I went to a number of their meetings and said, hey, this is a great technology, you ought to check it out, they invited me on down for a session, during which they brought up all kinds of objections or things that they thought were deal killers. And Nuria Fernandez, the head of VTA at the time, I guess she's moved on to bigger and better, but she said, hey, this is going to require a public-private partnership. And I responded saying, you're right, this will. And there are companies out here that are trying to set that up specifically. And my comment was not commented upon, basically passed over. They went right on to the next objection. And that's the way the meeting went. And I got, and I've gone back to him a couple of times since, and she's just not willing to budge on it, apparently. So again, if our systems were working properly, we would have at least done an experimental system in the last 40 years of PRT here in the country. But something's broken here, and it's not happening.
Yeah. It's just something off the cuff. Have you thought about approaching Tesla?
Well, Tesla, as you probably know, has their own idea of how they want to do transit. And like me, they want to do personal transit. Here, just get in this Tesla car and go down this tube. They're going underground. I think that people were kind of evolved to be above ground critters.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that, we can do it this way. Why do it that way is
Right.
kind of what it boils down to, unless there's a major cost difference. And they made noises like there might be, they might be able to do their stuff for under 5 million a mile. And then we'd have a real conversation. Once we find out what this really costs, if it actually costs 15 million a mile or less, then we'd have something to compare, and we could, make our decisions based on that. Yeah. In this particular area, undergrounding is very challenging, which is why the cost of the BART borough, that 6-mile extension from Berryessa over to Diridon Station and up to Santa Clara, the BART borough is estimated to cost, I think, I think they're approaching $7 billion for the cost of that 6 miles now. So
Wow.
that works out to $1 billion a mile. That's a lot more than 15 million a mile,
Yeah,
if you get my drift.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for the answers. Appreciate it.
Any other questions for either John or Rob?
I do have to make a comment. A little disclaimer I forgot to make earlier. These are bills that are in the flow. None of them are final yet, so they can change at any time. So if you want to know the absolutely current status of whether the Sierra Club is supporting something or not, you need to call the Sierra Club California office, and they will tell you whether, as the bill is currently written, if we're in favor or not, because bills are always changing. So don't go calling your assembly person or senator without checking with the Sierra Club California office in Sacramento first. So a little disclaimer there, you know, that the list I gave you was as of June 7th. So it's only been a week. I don't think it's changed, but you know, people can modify bills at any time. So it's always good to check with the local office in Sacramento before you call your assembly person or representative. And also because the Sacramento office will want to know. They want to know who's contacting assembly and senators and advocating for various bills so they can help you with that effort. And yes, I'm in favor of Rob's idea. I've been in favor of for what, 2 decades now, and hopefully one of these decades we'll see it. Because it seems silly to keep investing, trying to get investing in roads. On a related topic, so in 2016, VTA passed the Measure B, which is a 30-year half-cent sales tax, which is generating the $6 billion that Rob was just talking about, which is funding VTA, the BART extension. But at any time, 2/3 of the BART board, two-thirds of the VTA board could vote to redirect that funding toward anything else. So at any time, if you can get 2/3 of the VTA board to reallocate Measure B funds, it is possible. Right now, they've set aside that they're doing whatever number Rob said toward BART. I think they've said it can only be a quarter of the total raised, which I think is expected to be, like he said, about $6 billion. BART can't get more than 1/4 of all the funds raised, but and only over 30 years. Unfortunately, the way VTA is headed right now is because they're going to do this really expensive digging right now. Their most recent proposal was to fund nothing else and only fund BART for the next couple of years. So no improvements to interchanges, no improvements to local roads, no improvement. So there's a lot of people really pissed off at the VTA board right now. And if you want to know who your representative is on the VTA board, I can send you a list.
Very interesting.
So it's very interesting to me, and I'll tell you why. At $15 million a mile for less than 1/3 of the cost of what they're estimating that BART Borough will cost, you can get 100 miles of guideway and cover basically 100 square miles kind of an area. And that would be a total game changer. And you can do it for so much less than what they're talking about doing for the BART Borough. So this is very interesting that they can redirect it, and all we need is 2/3, not even 3/4, huh? Well, this is interesting. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately for bicycles and peds, the bill only allocates $250 million. So they've already said that will be doled out at $8.3 million a year for the next 30 years. So that's all the bike and ped money we're going to see come out of that billions and billions of dollars that were approved in Measure B. Unless we get them to vote differently.
Okay, Kristen Sandel, would you like to
Yeah.
pose a question?
Yeah, I do. I had a couple questions. I was curious if you were able to complete the PRT system that you are working on, what would the estimated annual like operating costs of that be? And what is the expected service life of a PRT system?
So thank you for the question. That's a good one. What I'm doing is taking the O&M costs of standard transit systems seems to be in the neighborhood of 3 to 5% of capital costs. So if you build, a mile of LRT and it costs 100 million to build that elevated guideway for it, or the system, then you're looking at somewhere between $3 and $5 million a year to maintain it. Likewise with bus systems and whatnot, there's 3 to 5% of capital costs. So we're actually looking at a 1 to 3% level of percent of capital costs to be our operating costs. Now, a large part of that is due to not having a lot of drivers driving around and not a lot of deadheading, heading back to the barns. But there's also, and then of course there's the fuel costs. As you're probably aware, electric cars cost a lot less to fuel up and go a couple of 100 miles than gasoline vehicles do. So we anticipate that that 1 to 3% is really going to be the area that we're going to be looking at. And when you apply that to a much less expensive system in the first place, then the numbers become manageable, such that we think that we can cover those costs, which are anticipated to be less than $1 million a year, through alternative revenue streams. And again, we've got a list of about 10 of them that are listed there in the business plan. Okay. Looks like we got Suzanne out here. Before I go, Kristen, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. And then I had another question, like what is the expected service life of a PRT system?
Well, given that the lifespan of any particular product largely depends on the number of parts, especially the moving parts. These PRT cabs don't have very many moving parts, is the short story. And so there's the lifespan is probably going to be at least as long as we would anticipate for any other transit system that one would install. So I'm imagining a 50-year time horizon is probably our starting point. But I anticipate it's going to be something like electric cars when they started saying, okay, we're going to sell you this Leaf and it's got this battery that should take you 100,000 miles. But then the reality comes back and it looks like that battery will last 300,000 miles. So because these guys have designed the system to be simple and failure proof, essentially, because they got so much redundancy in it, we really don't anticipate a short lifespan, shall we say. We do anticipate a much, much longer lifespan than we would say for something as complex as a bus. Pass.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Suzanne.
Yes, and I'm sorry, this is not a question for you, but for John, because this is very interesting to me, though. I love the idea because I'm from Las Vegas, and it's interesting watching what Elon Musk is doing over there with the pods and everything. But my question, I mean, I'm here in San Francisco now, but John, you mentioned the recycling, and I missed part of that. Can you please tell me which bill that is? Because I want to do more research on that, because I'm huge into recycling, and I'm wanting to make sure we're not putting things in that recycle bin that should not be there.
Well, there's more than one. There's at least 3 of them, combating different parts of the so boy, in the chat, I don't know if you can see it. Brett put it in the chat. It's the link to the actual page with the documents. So I'm just going to re-put it in the chat for you.
Yes, I see that
URL and look at the priority bill list, and you'll find at least 3 separate bills that talk about recycling.
Oh, okay. One
of them about making it easier to recycle. Well, okay, I'm not going to go over the list again.
Okay, that's fine. I can see it now. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Suzanne.
Brett, you actually still have your hand up.
Yeah, I had a couple more comments. I was just going to mention that the system in Contra Costa County is actually being done with a lot of cooperation from the bus agency. Tri-Delta Transit, I think it is very involved in it. And it occurred to me that if you can convince BART and or VTA, but especially BART, that this PRT system will increase their ridership, it's a no-brainer for them to take a tiny pittance of that, of that sales tax and just fund your whole system and get it done. I mean, it's 150 million would be 10 miles, which I think is more than enough to do the whole system, right?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Yeah. Basically, you just have to convince them it'll increase their ridership. Good luck.
Sounds good. I'll try that.
Okay, any other questions? No.
Oh, by the way, Brett, has that particular approach worked for you there in Santa Cruz?
Well, for the longest time, I just kind of accepted that they're going with rail. But very recently, the rail plans for Santa Cruz County have just kind of blown up, and they just didn't get the vote that they thought they were going to get to keep going forward with the they wanted to do a light rail kind of system, or maybe a commuter rail.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to take advantage of the moment and get started on trying to get something going here. I've been in touch with Glideways who are doing the Contra Costa system, and there's a possibility that they're going to get involved in trying to get something going here.
Now, Brett, my understanding of the Glideways system that they're proposing sounds like a lot of it is running around at grade level, and it's elevated just for not as much of the 28 miles is elevated. Most of it's ground level. Is that true, or?
I think maybe 2/3 of it is elevated.
Okay.
I mean, they basically want a dedicated corridor, just like any other PRT system.
Yep.
So, if that can run along something, if basically they're elevated where they need to be elevated.
Okay.
But their design basically has the pod cars coming down to ground level for people to board and unboard or offboard. So they might be doing elevators somewhere, but it looks to me like their stations are going to be at ground level, and then the pod goes up to run on the dedicated guideway.
All right. Yeah, we chose to leave our stations elevated and use an elevator / stairs for people to access it because it's less of a at the ground level footprint.
Yeah, well, and it's a different kind of system. Glideways runs on rubber wheels, so it's kind of intuitive for it to come down and run on the road.
Well, wait a minute.
Where people won't be hitting their heads on the guideway.
Well, this our system is using rubber wheels too. Pneumatic, 80 psi, rolling on steel plates, nice and quiet. Man, you can't get much better than that.
Yeah, just can't see the wheels in normal operation.
Okay. Any other comments?
So did the Guadalupe Group want to do anything about what they've learned tonight?
Well, you asked me that before, and I said, well, we don't have that kind of money, but I can give you a platform to talk to, an event.
All right.
So you've received our gift. You may not have recognized it.
And I understand that this is being recorded, so we'll actually be
Yeah.
able to watch the
So
recording
I'll cut off some of the things that happen here at home. Yeah, in a few days, we can send it out to some others who didn't get on the email list for tonight, and resend it to the original group who received this.
Great. I look forward to sharing that.
Okay. Okay. So thanks again, Rob, and thanks, John, for your help here.
Here, here.
And everybody have a good evening.
Right. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Good night.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.